So far, we've learned about converting between different types of numbers, integers to doubles and doubles to ints. You've also seen us convert back and forth between integers and characters. In this video, we will learn how to convert from a string to an integer. Now, depending on the order that you're watching these videos, you may not have learned much about strings yet. If you haven't, don't worry, we'll learn about them later. But to understand this lesson, you need to know that C strings are special arrays of char elements, and that we can declare and initialize a string literal variable like this. Now, suppose we have a string literal that we might want to interpret as a number. Now, S points to the string 1, 7. Notice that I didn't say 17. S is a string with two characters. The first is the character representing the digit 1, and the second is a 7. Each of those characters takes 1 byte of memory and holds the appropriate ASCII code for its digit. But there are some important situations where we would like to take S and use its value 17 to set an integer variable to the value 17. We need something like this. This program uses a function that takes the string S as a parameter and returns the integer represented by the string. The function stir_to_l is just what we need. It does these simple conversions and also helps us avoid issues in more complicated cases. The name stir_to_l stands for string to long, but sometimes people call it stirtol. As you might guess, the function returns a long. But as you learned earlier in this module, we can assign a long to an integer without losing information. The first parameter is the string we want to convert. We can set the second parameter to null for now. We'll come back to it later. The third parameter, base, is the base of the number system we want to use to interpret the string that we are converting. You and I just assumed that 17 should be read and understood using base 10, our usual number system. But stir_to_l is actually much more powerful. For example, if you had a string of zeros and ones representing a number in binary, or base 2, you could specify 2 as the last parameter, and stirtol would do the conversion correctly. We'll just set the base to 10. Let's try running our program. Another way in which stir_to_l is more powerful than you might have first thought is that it can handle leading spaces and a leading plus or minus sign. Let's change our value of S to see this. Nice. Now, about that second parameter. Suppose our string begins with an integer, but then the digits are followed by other non-numeric characters. Stir_to_l still extracts the integer correctly, and it uses the middle parameter to tell the caller where the leftover piece of the string starts. Notice that the second parameter is of type pointer to char. That's the address of a pointer to char. If instead of null, we pass in the address of a pointer to char, stir_to_l sets the pointer to point to the first character of the leftover, or the unconverted, part of the first parameter. Let's change our example to demonstrate this. First, we'll update our string S to include non-numeric characters. Next, we need a pointer that will refer to the first character stir_to_l didn't use to generate the number it is returning. Notice that leftover is type pointer to char, or char star. We need a pointer to char, so we'll pass the address of leftover. Ampersand leftover is type char star star. And now we'll just print the remainder so we can verify how stir_to_l works. After the call to stir_to_l, leftover is set to point to the space character between the 7 and the O from other junk. Stir_to_l skips over leading white space, but trailing white space is considered to be unconverted. There are a few other fine points of handling error situations that might come up with stir_to_l, but you can learn about them from the man page, as you need this extra information during your own programs.